You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. We continue our discussion now with top voices from business and from labor. Joining us as one of our panelists here is Pat Devaney, the Secretary and Treasurer with the AFL-CIO, the largest conglomerate of trade unions in Illinois, and also Todd Meisch, the President and CEO of the Illinois Chamber of Commerce, representing businesses all across our state. Todd, the Chamber has made an interesting observation in the language that would change in the state constitution. We have that language on screen right now. The old language explicitly bans a graduated income tax. Voters expect this, they're aware of it. That's the big crux of this issue here, right? But there's another part of the old language on the chopping block. Quote, at any one time, there may be no more than one such tax imposed by the state for state purposes on individuals and one such tax so imposed on corporation. That's in the Constitution now. What happens if it comes out?
What happens is that this legislature will already have broad new authority to have the graduated rates, to go ahead and expand taxation, but this will allow them to have multiple taxes on the same dollar of your income. Right now, you may think the rate's too high, you may think it's too low. The state gets one bite at the apple. This will allow them to go ahead and put multiple taxes on top of $1. It also allows them to target industries and target types of income for additional taxation.
I guess, what makes you say that? I read this language here, it's sort of legalese, right? But why, when you say more than one tax on $1 of income, put that in layman's terms, what does that look like? You said there's the potential to target industries. How would that work? How would that look?
Well, just imagine if you're a realtor, and for some reason the legislature wanted to go ahead and put you in the bracket, and you'd pay regular income tax. This language allows them to come back and say, we think that revenue that's generated from real estate transactions should have a second tax placed on it. You can do that on individuals, type of income, rental income. Someone may decide that in a future legislature that they want to go ahead and put an extra surcharge, income tax surcharge on rental income. This allows it. The current Constitution doesn't allow that.
Interesting. So there could be, and do you see any, I've seen some discussion around the topic that perhaps local governments could add a tax on income as well. Is that something that you see? I want to point to the part that says one income tax imposed by the state for state purposes. That seems to address the state. Do you think by removing that, does it open up a door for local city taxes on income as well?
This one is not quite as clear cut. I personally think that every word that is in this amendment was pored over for hours. So if you look at the difference between the state and the General Assembly, somebody made that change for a reason. We think that the current language enacts a prohibition because local units of government are divisions of the state of Illinois. So we think it applies all the way down, and you are not going to have those local income taxes. Taking this out, changing the state to General Assembly, we think opens the door to local income taxes.
Pat, most everyone enjoys a tax cut. That's inherent and obvious in Governor Pritzker's rhetoric, that 97% of people would pay the same or get a tax cut. They're selling the tax cut side of it. So setting that part aside, what else is there in the graduated income tax that workers should be excited about? Why support a graduated income tax from the union perspective?
So, Mark, what we have in Illinois, and we've had it for decades, is an extremely unfair taxation process. For instance, the lowest 20% of workers pay double the amount that the top 1% pay as a percentage of their overall income. It's the illustration of a regressive taxation system. What the fair tax is creating a fairer approach. And yes, it's an approach that 97% of taxpayers will receive a tax cut. And if you make over $250,000, if you're fortunate enough to make over $250,000, we're going to ask you to pay a little bit more, only on the amount that you make over $250,000. What that's going to be able to do for workers, what that's going to be able to do for our state, is allow the state to invest in education, healthcare, infrastructure, social services, public safety, the things that are really lagging right now, and frankly, the things as we recover and try to emerge from this pandemic are really essential that we double down in our investment.
Pat, I've had a number of voters look at the airwaves and see ads and just feel inundated with messages one way or the other, and they say, what does this all mean? Some of them come back with this simple question and say, if I make $30,000 a year and I pay 4.95% income, I pay that much. I pay about $1,500 a year in income taxes. If I make $4 million a year, I pay about $200,000 in income taxes, if my quick math is correct, right? But it's that same rate. So they're not paying the same amount. The person who makes more is paying more. And some people just come back to that simple question, why isn't that fair at that flat rate? You alluded to it, but explain that a little bit more. Why do you say people at the bottom levels pay double their share of income if their flat tax is literally the same number, the same rate as a person who makes more?
So it's the amount of available income you have to pay towards taxes. The examples you used, a $30,000 wage earner, obviously, a 4 or 5% hit is going to be much more significant than on a wage earner that's much higher. And so in this proposal, and it's a fact, 97% of all taxpayers will see their taxes reduced. And only those making over $250,000 will see an increase. We just believe it's a much fairer approach to taxation in our state, and one that will allow us to do the investments that we so much need at this time.
And as you both know, Governor Pritzker was a venture capitalist before becoming governor. He's well familiar with businesses that are trying to grow. So he would find and invest in startups. Many of them need those investment dollars, the capital to get up and off the ground. We asked him earlier this week what effect this graduated income tax might have on that pursuit of businesses trying to get up off the ground if they have to pay a higher income, if they're starting to flourish and grow. What effect would that have? Here was his answer.
What I did before I became governor was actually work with small businesses. Here's what I know. The fair tax actually lowers taxes on more than 70% of small businesses. We want small businesses to thrive. They are the job creators in our economy. We want to make sure that the wealthiest people in the state are paying a fair tax rate that they ought to pay, which is a higher rate than people who are in the middle class, people who are trying to start businesses, people who are working class, working families should pay. In my opinion, people pay too much in taxes, working families pay too much in taxes in this state. That's why we have proposed this fair tax, lower taxes on the 97% of people who've been unfairly taxed too high, and ask those who are wealthiest to pay a little bit more.
Todd, you represent a lot of businesses in Illinois. What is that bottom line impact on businesses that are trying to grow, or businesses that have already sort of arrived, if they have to pay a higher corporate income tax, or if their executives pay a higher personal income tax? What is the effect on the business climate?
Sure, the governor is a business person. He still has investments out there, but he also knows what New York Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo knows, and that is that you're raising taxes on some of the most mobile people on the globe. Cuomo said that about people leaving New York when taxes got too high. The governor also knows that, but he conveniently forgets it. And I think it's very, very evident that some of the wealthiest folks are going to leave the state of Illinois. They're going to take their income and their tax dollars with them, and they're going to leave the tab for people who can't leave the state of Illinois, which is the middle class and on down. So I think the governor knows what the real problem is here. For some reason, he just doesn't address it.
Pat, can you address that? What do you think drives out migration? As you talk to workers, as you understand the sentiment, do you have your finger on the pulse of why people might make that decision to leave the state? And I say that because it is true that over the last 10, 20 years, as Illinois has fewer people paying taxes, a shrinking population, that's self-defeating in trying to raise enough revenue to keep the state going. It erodes the tax base there. How do you reverse that? Is there any hope? Can you explain how a graduated income tax might reverse that out-migration trend?
Well, when you look at the data as to what causes out-migration and the out-migration we've experienced in Illinois, because we did see some, especially after the 2.5-year budget delay from our previous administration, it was mostly low-wage earners who were leaving our state. So the notion that the high wage earners are going to be driven out by a fair tax just simply isn't supported by data or fact, and you don't have to believe me. You can look at the other 35 states that have a fair tax system or something similar to it, have not experienced that. I know our friends in the business community like to compare us to our neighbors. Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, all have fair tax systems, and Minnesota has a fair tax system, and they've experienced the greatest amount of growth and economic activity of any state in the Midwest. So just the facts don't support the notion that if we create a fair tax system in our state, where 97% of the people receive a tax cut, that it's going to drive away business or our wealthiest residents.
Yeah, it's an interesting argument, Todd, this idea that if you raise my taxes, I'm going to leave. Everywhere, people still move back to Illinois. Some of the richest people in the world, in the country, reside here in Illinois. Why do people that have it that well off really say, you know what, I'm just going to pick up and move because I have to pay a little bit more in income tax?
Well, let me first of all address the notion that this proposal is the fair tax. The current system is the fair tax. The top 1% that everybody in labor and the proponents want to talk about already pay 1/4 of all Illinois income taxes. The top 20% pay 2/3 of all state income taxes. Bottom 80%, just the remaining 1/3. So, and some people at the bottom of the scale, even get a check from the state in the form of the earned income tax credit that's refundable. So we don't buy into the fact that this is a fair tax. What we've got now is currently the fair tax.
I want to ask both of you this question. We've heard this from some of our panelists, and we've heard this from some voters as well, but the Illinois Chamber and unions supported the capital bill that passed. It doubled the state's gas tax, and it also tied it to inflation. So as inflation grows, so does the gas tax. Governor Pritzker has also said that those sorts of use taxes are regressive in nature because people who make the $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year, they have to pay that extra, and they have less and less disposable income available after. Looking back, good decision to raise the gas tax, and how does that change the conversation around whether or not we should pass a graduated income tax to cut some income tax for people who make less than $100,000 a year? Pat, first the question to you. Would you still support the gas tax today if you could? And how does that extra cost factor into voters' minds, do you think, as they evaluate this question? Should we change the state's flat tax to a graduated one?
Yeah, so I think Todd and I are going to agree on this point. I can't imagine what our state's economy would look like had we not passed the gas tax. We were able to do that and fund a $46 billion capital program, vertical and horizontal, that puts thousands and is going to put thousands of workers to work across the state when our state needs it the most. We didn't know a pandemic was going to occur when that passed, but thank goodness that we passed it, because that is going to be a key element to our recovery. But if anyone's upset about taxation, or if anybody is upset about any sort of fees or other types of costs associated with state government, that's a reason to vote for the fair tax. The fair tax is a tax cut for 97% of the people watching this program. It's absolutely true, it's grounded in fact, and it's something that's undisputable. So if you are opposed to taxation and raising taxes, and you're one of those 97% that will see a tax cut, I think a vote yes on the fair tax is definitely in order.
Todd, do you trust Illinois? I think you've made the point that voters can't trust legislators in Springfield with a, quote, blank check. That assumes the future. That assumes that down the road lawmakers would again raise taxes. But why couldn't it go the other way? Why couldn't it be that in the future lawmakers could cut taxes again on people who have less disposable income?
Well, because this isn't about fairness, really. It's about the money. It's always about the money. So think about it. This whole proposal that's out there only raises $3.4 billion, and that's if you assume everybody sticks around to pay their tab. But our backlog of unpaid bills is still more than $6 billion, and we've got increases in education schedules, increases in pension payments that are scheduled. You've got to go ahead and tax more people than this plan does in order to get the money. So this plan is setting up the framework to go after the money. The middle class is going to end up paying, maybe not this first go around, but the legislature will quickly find out there's not enough money in taxing millionaires to meet their spending desire.
But isn't there something inherently flawed in that logic? You're saying this tax raise doesn't go far enough to solve the state's fiscal problems, but doesn't that admit that it goes in the right direction?
Well, not by itself, no. So we talked about people wanting to go ahead and leave the state. They'll see with this plan that all it does is raise money, more taxes increases are on the way, and that's going to influence their decision because they don't see any spending restraints. They don't see pro-growth economies. You can't raise taxes enough to satisfy all of our problems here. You've got to go ahead and restrain spending. You've got to get the economy growing again. And then at that point, some people might want to have a discussion about what our real revenue needs are, but only after you've done those first two things.
Pat, evaluate that part of what Todd said, the economic growth factor. I'll set the table again with this perspective. Governor Pritzker and pretty much everybody who views this issue says there's really only three ways out. You cut spending, you raise taxes, or you grow the size of the economy. How does this proposal to raise taxes on the wealthy, put a little bit more spending money in the pockets of people who make less, how does that change the trajectory of Illinois' economy? Can you make the argument that by zapping a little bit of that money at the top, which some say is working capital, that's money that can go back into the economy through creating jobs, or through putting money in the pockets of people at the bottom, how does that change the economic outlook for the state of Illinois?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm glad we all agree that the state definitely needs revenue to be able to balance its budget and to be able to invest in the things that are important to its residents. However, I disagree with the notion that we haven't done things to invest in the state and to grow jobs. I just mentioned a $46 billion capital program that we are just now launching and beginning to let bids to be able to create jobs across our state. The fact remains is we have had an unfair taxation system across our state for decades. It needs to be modified to reflect tax cuts for the people who need them most, the middle class and the working poor who are aspiring to get into the middle class, and ask our wealthiest to pay just a little bit more to make ends meet. That will allow us to invest in education, in healthcare, in infrastructure that will create the jobs you're asking about, Mark. I firmly believe that, and the fair tax is a path in that direction.
And Pat, most workers in trade unions are in the middle class by nature. Will the AFL-CIO oppose any future tax hikes on the middle class?
Yeah, we've opposed tax hikes on the middle class, for ages, and which is why we're supporting the fair tax now. We're supporting a taxation system that respects the middle class and the working poor that are aspiring to get into it. That's something that's very consistent with our history and what we'll continue to do in the future on behalf of the almost 1 million union workers that make up the Illinois AFL-CIO.
Todd, polling shows this very well could come down to the wire. There's a very real chance Governor Pritzker's biggest campaign promise fails. It's really on the fence here. If it does fail, the Pritzker administration has warned that one alternative could be raising taxes on everyone through the flat tax. How would that impact the economy?
Well, it's pretty astounding that because voters rejected a tax increase, the first thing the administration came back and said, well, then we're going to raise taxes. Pretty kind of astounding approach to that. What we would say is, again, remind everyone that this is just a bag full of cash left in the back door of the State House. No property tax relief, no pension reforms at all, no increases guaranteed for education. So this simply just gives the legislature a lot more money, and we just have to trust them they're going to spend it wisely. That's a recipe for disaster, I believe, and that's why I think a lot of voters are going to say, this is not for us. You got to come back and do better on spending restraint and growing the economy.
You're saying there's no property tax relief. I think you mean to say there's no promise or guarantee that in fact it will happen. The governor has said it will. You said there's no education spending increase. The governor has said they will. Pension property payment increase. You said there's none of that. The governor has said they will. So are you making the case that because there's not a guarantee in the constitutional amendment, that if you had those guarantees, that would be more amenable? Or how can you say there will be none of those three things when the people in power say all of those things will be a result of the graduated income tax.
Sure. None of those things are enshrined in this Constitution Amendment, and they could have been. There could have been a tie to education funding like it was in Colorado, tie to property tax reform. It all could be in there, but they chose not to make it as easy as possible to raise taxes and spend it on what they want in the future. How many times have the legislature and governors from both parties said things before the election, and then lo and behold, things have changed? Remember when Pat Quinn was going to put 1% increase in dedicated education? Well, the next thing you know, just a few weeks later, he doubles the income tax increase. It happens all the time. This legislature, voters should not simply trust this legislature not to change the laws at a drop of a hat.
Pat, can you make the argument that over the years, as Illinois' finances have floundered, that state lawmakers have had their hands tied with this flat tax? They haven't had all of the available tools at their disposal. How has that, over history, the flat tax, boxed lawmakers in, do you think?
Well, they've been unable to come up with the revenue our state really needs. And just to dispel this notion, because our opponents use it frequently to try to scare voters into voting against their interests, that they should be concerned about something that's done in the future, when in fact, we know exactly what we're asking voters to choose here. We're asking them to choose a fair taxation system that allows tax cuts for 97% of the citizens, and ask people making over $250,000 to pay a little bit more. That is a fair deal for Illinois residents, and something I hope everybody embraces.
Pat and Todd, interesting conversation. Thank you both for joining us. We have much more of this conversation available up online. Next, the head of the Black Chamber of Commerce and the head of Women Employed, how the graduated income tax might impact economic opportunity in the workplace for women and minorities. That's next.